You think your badge puts you above the rules? This neighborhood has standards. Remove that vehicle and trim those bushes by 5 p.m. or you—
The red and blue lights were for me this time. Screaming across my own driveway at 4:27 a.m. Cold air bit my face as I stepped out in a hoodie, bare feet on the stone. My porch lights were blazing over two idling patrol cars. At the end of my walkway stood Karen from across the cul-de-sac, robe tied tight, finger stabbing at my front door like it had personally insulted her. She told the deputies I was trespassing on my own porch and unstable, that she had called the HOA and the police 22 times this month about me. Funny thing, watching your own deputies walk up like you are the threat, when you are the sheriff. 1 hour earlier my phone buzzed on the nightstand. Porch camera alert. I watched Karen march up my steps at 3:23 a.m., glare into the lens, and shove a stack of notes under my mat before pounding on the door until my dog barked itself hoarse. Later, replaying that clip, the title in my head became Karen trespassed onto the mansion porch with 22 threats, too bad I am the sheriff. It was about a neighbor who treated rules like weapons. She hated my patrol SUV, my kids' bikes, my Christmas lights still up on May 3, 2024. So she turned the board into her private army and picked me as her project. I tried to end it the easy way. Next morning I walked over with hot coffee, badge in my pocket. I told her I just wanted to talk like neighbors. She cracked the door 2 inches and said all communication must go through the HOA. At the board meeting that week, I sat in the back and waited my turn. When I spoke, a few neighbors stared at the table, and no one backed me up. Karen sat at the front with her arms folded while the president wrote down my name and said they would look into my concerns. That was my line in the sand. I knew I could not swing my badge like a bat, and I refused to play vigilante. So I promised myself I would use only proper channels and let the system do what it was built to do. First, I dragged out every crumpled notice and angry email Karen had sent me. I lined up photos, emails, and call logs in a binder. Then I wrote it all down. Timeline item 1 April 5 at 4:27 a.m. false trespass call. Patterns of false reports can be prosecuted. I called our internal affairs unit for advice, then looped in the city attorney so everything sat on record, clean and careful. Next came the public records moment. I filed requests for every complaint Karen had made in our subdivision over the last year. A week later, the clerk at headquarters rolled out a swollen folder that hit the counter with a dull thud. The file landed with 63 pages. Trespass claims that turned out to be food delivery drivers. Emails where she claimed to speak for worried parents I knew had never spoken to her. The annual HOA meeting was already on the calendar. I asked to give a community safety talk and booked the projector. The board smiled, happy to have the sheriff on their side, or so they thought. That night the room was packed. I started with simple safety tips, a few crime stats, nothing wild. Then I clicked to the porch camera clip. There was Karen, in full HD, at 3:23 a.m., on my porch, stuffing 22 handwritten threats under my mat and pounding on my door while my house sat dark. I walked them through the binder, the timeline, the calls. Right on cue, a city code inspector stepped in with his own folder, and a sergeant from another division joined me. The sergeant calmly explained how repeated false calls dragged officers away from real emergencies. The inspector read out her unapproved shed, her fence extension, her unpaid fines over $3,000. Neighbors filmed as Karen stood up, red-faced, shouting that this was harassment. The board did not buy it. With all those eyes and cameras on them, they finally checked their backbone. They voted to remove Karen from her committee seat and barred her from filing complaints in the HOA's name without review. Outside, the sergeant finished paperwork with her on the same porch where she once screamed at me, while the inspector taped a bright notice to her front door. In the neighborhood group chat, the clip of her 3:23 a.m. porch march spread fast, and comments poured in from people saying they had been scared of her for years. A week later, the cul-de-sac felt lighter. The HOA president dropped by my mansion with an apology letter and a box of donuts, promising new rules and real oversight. Karen still lived across the way, but her yard was suddenly perfect and her porch light went off on time. I sat on my own steps one quiet evening, warm mug in hand, listening to crickets and distant traffic instead of sirens and pounding fists, and felt the street finally breathe. Please follow for more HOA showdowns like this. Do you think she got what she deserves? Comment below.